So this is my final devlog. This is going to be basically an overview for everything I have done. For the month of March, creating my crafting system. Not necessarily a game, because I spent so much time working on this system, trying to make it the best I could. But making something super simple. So we press tab and it brings up our inventory system on the left and then our crafting system on the right. And learning all this, I followed a bunch of different tutorials, meticulously watching them over and over again, and also looking through documentation and finding different ways that people had come up with inventory systems or crafting systems on their own, and just trying to make all these things fit and work together. That was probably the hardest part, getting them to work cohesively. And so, yeah, I'll just walk you through the steps. So we go to the first person character. After we press tab, it opens up our inventory and crafting menus. And after that, it'll show us any of the items that we had picked up. And if we go back here, so we could say that this is a piece of wood. We press E and we pick that up. And so it registers through this script here. So after you interact with it, we create an item structure, or we create a slot structure and add all of its contents into the inventory. And so since this was a piece of wood, it only added one of them. So since this is a piece of wood, it adds all of the content that's on the wood's properties here. So we open up the item structure, and things like the name, description, is it stackable, the thumbnail, just a random one for now. The stack size, is it consumable, and its class. Everything else here is kind of irrelevant. It's just there for use in some other parts of the blueprints, or some different blueprints. And yeah, after it registers all of that, in the inventory here, after all of that stuff has been registered, we can use it in different places. So inventory query, create stack, partial stack. So all of the things that were in the slot contents in this item structure, which is like name, description, all that good stuff. After all of that is stored, we can use it here. So we create a for loop for the inventory, and then we break it down, and it can take things like the class in different places. It has different uses. So content to add, we would create a stack that's for stacking different items on top of each other within the inventory. That way it's not just filling up each slot. So for example, if we pick this up, right, and then we picked up a different item, it wouldn't stack, it would just go on to the next one. But I think this is stackable. If we pick up another rock, no, that's not stackable. So if we pick up a plant, then we pick up another plant, that is stackable. So there would be two instead of just one after the other. And so yeah, that's just basically using all of the properties that we stored on this here before in this item structure. And in our crafting component, so after we press tab, it would bring up this crafting menu, create the widget, and after it creates a widget, it creates all those slots. And basically what we're doing to allow us to craft an item is we're running this on tick, which probably isn't the best idea, but it's just the way that I have it done, according to like the videos and other things that I was referencing. So we're checking every frame if our mouse is hovering over one of these items, one of these craftable items. So if I'm hovering away from everything, then it's just empty. And if I'm hovering over the healing herb, it knows that I'm hovering over this, and it already has all the slot contents, what the requirements are for each specific item that we want to craft. So if I'm hovering over the healing herb, then it knows that, okay, I need 3 items, and they all have to be of type plant. So if we pick up one plant, we see it stored here. When we right click, it turns false. It knows that we have type plant, but we do need 3. So if we pick this up again, right click, still false. And if we pick up another one, the third and final one, we right click, turns true, this disappears. For some reason, the item only comes back after we untoggle and toggle the backpack. And this is all done in the crafting slot. So if we're hovering, true, and then set whatever item we're hovering over, the hovered item, and that hovered item ends up being used over here. So if there is a hovered item, then get all the contents of that hovered item, which is the healing herb. So we would need, so all the contents would be, well, one of the things would be a recipe, and that recipe would be item plant. We have a couple of different things here. And so what we need is an item plant, and we would need 3 of these things. And so it all registers in the check recipe function. And so, yeah, from the hovered item crafting, we grab this recipe that we just saw in here, and it registers into this function. And now basically what's going on here is it's checking to see if the recipe that the item needs and it's checking to see if the items in our inventory match with the recipe that's being asked of in the crafting menu. So we're checking the inventory, going through a for loop, going through every single item to see if any of these items have a class of the same type of this for loop that's referencing the recipe type. And after that returns true, we check another bool and see if the quantity of our item is the same as the quantity necessary, the quantity needed from the recipe. So to sum up, check all the item types and see if they're true, and check if that item type has the same quantity in the inventory as the quantity that is needed from the recipe. Very confusing stuff to say, but and then it ends up working in the end. And if all of this is true, print true, and then remove all of the items used from your inventory and just get rid of them, and add the content from that slot structure. So if you go back, it references the contents here from the hovered item crafting. And since the hovered item crafting is the healing herb, it takes the slot contents and puts it into here, and then it adds that to your inventory, basically like what we just saw before. So pick up 3 plants, and since there are 3 plants, we can right click, it removes it from our inventory, and then it adds the item that we were hovering over, which is the healing herb. And that's it for the functions of the crafting and inventory system. But the things that I am running into, the problems, would be the way I have it structured now is that we wouldn't be able to find an object with 2 different requirements. So if I was to need a rock and a piece of wood for like some sword for whatever reason, the way I have it set up now is it would only check for one of those things. So if I have a rock or a piece of wood, it would say, okay, cool, we have both, even though it really doesn't. So that's something I have to look at for the next time I'm working on the crafting system. And another thing as well is that because we are using an enumerator through our item categories, every time I add a new item that we want to craft, for whatever reason, it just completely resets like all of the values. Like this would just completely refresh, and I would have to plug in everything over and over again, like some stuff that had happened here. And that's just something that I have to work on next time, because every time I add a new item in the enumerator, everything resets, and that's not what we want. We want to be able to fluidly just add new things as we want them to. And because of this problem here, I'm keeping the amount of things that I add to a minimum. Just basically trying to limit it as small as I can. But the next time we work on this crafting system, definitely have to improve it and make sure that we can just add things on the fly and not worry about problems like that. So we have to keep inputting nodes and refreshing and keep fixing every single time. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching the vid. This is basically the way I did my crafting and inventory system. And for the first time, this is the first time I've ever done crafting or inventory, and just making something very, very basic. And this is something that can be expanded upon, so I can just use this for one of my other projects. But while using this for another project, I definitely improve it some more. That way it can just be easily usable for not only myself, but if someone else was to step on, they'd be able to pick it up relatively quickly. So thanks.